On the 14th of July 2026, the World Cup semifinal will be played in Dallas, Texas. It falls on a Tuesday. Outdoor temperatures could reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit. 80,000 people will be inside AT&T Stadium, one of the largest and most expensive sports venues ever built. And from every corner of the world, millions of football fans will descend on Dallas that summer, booking hotels, making reservations, taking photos at the landmarks as if Dallas were just another city hosting just another sporting event. But Dallas is not just another city. And there is one location at the center of this city 45 minutes by car from AT&T Stadium that no other World Cup host city can match. Its name is Dealey Plaza. On the 22nd of November, 1963, at 12:30 inches the afternoon, the presidential motorcade carrying John F. Kennedy passed through it. 8 seconds later, American history was split into two parts, before and after. Kennedy was shot. He was pronounced dead 30 minutes later. The man accused, Lee Harvey Oswald, was in custody within 90 minutes. 2 days after that, he was shot dead by a man named Jack Ruby, inside Dallas Police Headquarters, in front of live television cameras broadcasting to the entire country, before Oswald could stand trial, before Oswald could say anything at all. That was the last conversation Oswald ever had. More than 60 years passed. Throughout that time, the CIA withheld hundreds of thousands of pages of records connected to the assassination, the stated reason: protecting national intelligence sources and methods. In March 2025, nearly 80,000 pages of those files were finally declassified. What was revealed was not an answer. What was revealed was evidence that the CIA knew far more about Oswald than it had ever admitted, knew about his meetings, knew about his phone calls, knew about the people around him, and had deliberately withheld that information from the very investigation established to find the truth. No one was prosecuted for that. No one explained why. This summer, millions of football fans will come to Dallas. Some of them will stop at Dealey Plaza as a tourist checkpoint. They will see the white X painted on the surface of Elm Street, placed there by private citizens, not by any government authority, marking the exact location where the first bullet struck Kennedy. They will take a photo, post it, add a hashtag, and move on. But before you come to Dallas, before you walk through Dealey Plaza and continue on with your trip, let me tell you what 60 years of classified files actually revealed. And more importantly, what they still have not explained. Because in Dallas, the biggest question was never who pulled the trigger. The biggest question is this: why did it take 60 years to say out loud what should have been said from the very beginning? Let's start with the stadium. AT&T Stadium, Arlington, Texas. And that distinction matters, not Dallas. The stadium sits inside the city of Arlington, a separate municipality wedged between Dallas and Fort Worth, belonging to neither. But everyone calls it the Dallas Stadium, because nobody comes here for Arlington. It opened in 2009. Construction cost: $1.2 billion. Capacity: 80,000. Expandable to over 100,000 for special events. During the 2026 World Cup, AT&T Stadium will host 9 matches, more than any other venue in the tournament, including the semifinal on July 14th. But when the World Cup begins, the name AT&T will disappear entirely. FIFA enforces strict rules on commercial branding. No external sponsor names may appear in connection with official tournament events. So for the duration of the competition, the venue will simply be called Dallas Stadium. Nothing more. A $1.2 billion building, named after a global telecommunications corporation, stripped of its identity for several months by order of a Swiss football organization. That is the scale of FIFA's authority. But before we talk about authority, let's talk about the building itself. The people of Dallas do not call it AT&T Stadium. They call it Jerry World, named after Dallas Cowboys owner and billionaire Jerry Jones, who funded a significant portion of its construction and treats it as his personal kingdom. There is a second nickname, less widely used but more revealing: the Death Star. Anyone who has seen the aerial view of the massive retractable roof structure will understand immediately why. The building is an engineering achievement. It is also a statement of power. The video screen suspended over the center of the field stretches 160 feet across, larger than many complete residential buildings, engineered to ensure that no spectator anywhere in the arena can avoid a clear image of whatever is being displayed. Several NFL players have punted or kicked footballs into the screen during live games. Jerry Jones decided not to raise it higher, because raising it would reduce the visual impact. But there is another problem with this building, one that was designed in from the start and has never been corrected. AT&T Stadium is oriented east to west. This is unusual in stadium design. Most large venues are aligned north to south, specifically to prevent direct sunlight from falling on the field during afternoon play. But AT&T Stadium has enormous glass walls at both the east and west ends, and in the late afternoon, sunlight pours directly through those walls onto the playing surface, causing players to lose sight of the ball. The stadium has blackout curtains. They work perfectly. Jerry Jones uses them for concerts and indoor events. But for Dallas Cowboys NFL games, Jones refuses to close them. His reason: natural light creates the atmospheric quality he wants to preserve. Players have complained. Referees have complained. Visiting coaches have complained. Jones has not changed his position. That is the level of control one individual exercises over a building that was partly funded by city bonds issued in the name of Arlington's residents. And then there are the things that happened during construction that very few people choose to bring up. Between 2006 and 2009, while the stadium was being built, several workers lost their lives, falling from the roof structure during installation, electrocuted in accidents involving the interior systems. No official tally was widely publicized. No names were placed anywhere inside the building. The stadium also contains a space known as the Tom Landry Room, a historical museum dedicated to the Cowboys' legendary head coach, located deep inside the building, rarely visited by anyone outside of staff. A number of long-serving stadium employees have described experiencing unexplained things in that section at night: sounds, sensations, things they could not account for. No one in stadium management has ever commented publicly on any of it. But here is the most significant fact about AT&T Stadium as a venue. With 9 World Cup matches, this will be the most used stadium in the entire 2026 tournament, more than any other venue. More even than MetLife in New York, which is hosting the final. Dallas will host more matches than the city holding the championship game. People will come because Dallas has the best stadium, because Jerry Jones built it specifically so that no one could overlook it. But here is what no World Cup travel brochure will print. The largest venue in the tournament sits inside a city where the biggest question it has ever faced has still not been fully answered. And 45 minutes down the road, there is a small public plaza where American history was permanently altered, and where, even today, what the CIA knew about that afternoon has not been entirely told. Now let's go to Dealey Plaza. From AT&T Stadium, you drive east on I-30, past the overpasses and office buildings and shopping centers of the Dallas suburbs, then down Commerce Street into the historic downtown core. About 45 minutes. You will know when you have arrived, not because of large signs, not because of barriers or security checkpoints, but because you will see people standing on the sidewalk, looking down at the road, looking at a white X. Dealey Plaza is not a monument. It is an ordinary public square, a small intersection on the western edge of downtown Dallas, where Main Street, Commerce Street, and Elm Street converge before feeding traffic into an underpass beneath the railroad tracks. There is a small fountain. There are grassy slopes. There is a gentle rise on the right-hand side if you face west. Traffic moves through it every day. No special signals. No dedicated tourist lane. The white X painted on the surface of Elm Street, placed and maintained by private citizens, not by the city of Dallas, not by the federal government, is continuously run over by passing cars. People continuously repaint it. This is where 8 seconds changed American history on the 22nd of November 1963. President John F. Kennedy had come to Dallas as part of a Texas political tour, a trip organized in part to repair fractures within the Democratic Party in the state ahead of the 1964 election. Texas at the time was complicated political terrain. Dallas was particularly complicated, a deeply conservative city where Kennedy was not well liked. In the days before the visit, Kennedy's advisors had warned that Dallas was a dangerous city. Ambassador Adlai Stevenson had been physically attacked by a crowd there just 1 month earlier. On the morning of the visit itself, the Dallas Morning News ran a full-page advertisement accusing Kennedy of treason. Not an editorial, an advertisement, paid for and printed. Kennedy read the paper in his hotel room that morning and said to his wife, "We're heading into nut country." That was the last morning of his life. The motorcade left Love Field Airport at 11:50. The route had been published in advance for the press, including the passage through Dealey Plaza on the way to the Dallas Trade Mart, where Kennedy was scheduled to speak at a luncheon. At 12:30 inches the afternoon, the midnight blue limousine carrying Kennedy turned onto Elm Street, the final stretch before the underpass. 3 shots were fired. Witnesses at the scene later gave testimony before the investigating commission that did not entirely align. Some heard the shots coming from behind from the six-story Texas schoolbook depository, where Oswald was later confirmed to have been present that day. Others, and this is the detail that has never been fully resolved, heard shots coming from ahead and to the right of the motorcade, from the grassy rise alongside Elm Street. That rise is what people now call the grassy knoll. Kennedy was struck twice, once in the neck, once in the head. Texas Governor John Connally, seated in the same vehicle, was also hit and critically wounded. The limousine accelerated and drove directly to Parkland Memorial Hospital, 5 minutes away. At 1:00 the afternoon, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was pronounced dead. He was 46 years old. Within 90 minutes of the shooting, Dallas police had Lee Harvey Oswald in custody, not at Dealey Plaza, not at the book depository, but at the Texas Theater, a movie house almost 4 miles from the scene, where Oswald had walked in to watch a film without buying a ticket. A staff member noticed and called the police. Officers surrounded the building. Oswald was subdued after raising a pistol and shouting, "This is police brutality." That was one of the last things Oswald ever said in public. Over the next 48 hours, Oswald was questioned without an attorney, without any formal recording, without the standard documentation that would normally accompany an interrogation of this magnitude. The only records of what was discussed are handwritten notes from a small number of officers. On the morning of November 24th, as Oswald was being transferred from Dallas Police Headquarters to the county jail, a man pushed through the crowd of reporters and officers packed into the basement of the building, walked directly up to Oswald, and fired a single shot into his abdomen. Oswald died 2 hours later. The shooter, Jack Ruby, was the owner of a Dallas nightclub, with documented connections to figures in the Chicago organized crime world. When asked why he had done it, Ruby said he had wanted to spare Jacqueline Kennedy the ordeal of testifying at a trial. No one among the police, journalists, and security personnel present in that basement has ever fully explained how Ruby got inside. The Warren Commission, established by President Lyndon B. Johnson to investigate the assassination, concluded in 1964. Oswald had acted alone. Ruby had acted alone. There was no conspiracy, but that did not end the questions. Because just outside Dealey Plaza, on the surface of Elm Street, the white X is still there. Every day, people come and stand on it. Stand where Kennedy sat in that limousine. Look up at the 6th-floor window of the book depository where Oswald fired, or where Oswald is said to have fired. Look across to the right toward the grassy knoll. Try to reconstruct those 8 seconds in their minds. And no one leaves with an answer that is completely satisfying. Because there are questions that Dealey Plaza cannot answer. Questions that required 60 years and nearly 80,000 declassified pages to even begin to address. And even then, the answer still isn't complete. So what were 60 years of classified files actually hiding? The CIA's official answer, repeated across decades, was always a single sentence: protecting intelligence sources and methods. A response that sounds reasonable until you ask the follow-up question. Which sources? Which methods? And why would those sources and methods remain sensitive enough to classify in 2024, in connection with an assassination that took place in 1963? In March 2025, by presidential order, nearly 80,000 pages of records were declassified and released to the public. The largest and final release in a process that had been unfolding since the 1990s. And here is what those documents revealed. First, the CIA knew far more about Oswald than it had ever acknowledged to any investigating body. Lee Harvey Oswald was not an obscure individual. He was a former United States Marine who had defected to the Soviet Union in 1959, spending 3 years there, marrying a Soviet woman, and returning to the United States in 1962 with financial assistance from the United States Department of State. No one has ever fully explained why a defector to an enemy nation was facilitated back into the country without prosecution. The CIA had been monitoring Oswald. This is now confirmed. The question is, to what degree, and what exactly did they know? Second, a CIA officer named George Joanides was actively supervising a Cuban exile student group in New Orleans in 1963, a group called the DRE, the Directorio Revolucionario Estudiantil, funded by the CIA. That group had direct, documented, broadcast confrontations with Lee Harvey Oswald on local radio in New Orleans, months before the assassination in Dallas. This is not speculation. This is declassified record. But the significant fact is not the confrontation itself. The significant fact is this. When the United States Congress established the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1976 to reopen the investigation, The CIA assigned George Joanides as its official liaison to that committee. The man the CIA sent to assist the investigation was the same man who had supervised the organization that had direct documented contact with Oswald. Without disclosing that fact to the committee, Joanides died in 1990. This was never investigated while he was alive. Third, the CIA operated a secret telephone intercept facility in Mexico City, running with the cooperation of the Mexican government, capable of monitoring calls to and from the Soviet and Cuban embassies. In October 1963, 6 weeks before the assassination, Oswald traveled to Mexico City and made contact with both embassies. The CIA intercepted those calls. The CIA knew about them, but the CIA did not inform the Justice Department that this facility existed, not during the Warren Commission investigation. The reason given? Disclosure would have exposed intelligence-gathering methods, which means the body responsible for investigating the assassination of an American president operated without knowing that the CIA was withholding information directly relevant to the primary suspect. Fourth, and this is the document that received the least attention, the 1975 secret deposition of James Jesus Angleton, the CIA's chief of counterintelligence, from 1954 to 1975, the man who ran the agency's most sensitive covert operations throughout the Cold War. This deposition was kept fully classified until the 2025 release. In it, Angleton described the scale of CIA covert activity during the 1960s infiltration operations, surveillance programs, influence campaigns at a level that senior officials within the United States government itself were not aware was occurring. Not a conspiracy theory, not speculation, a sworn deposition from the head of CIA counterintelligence. And Jack Ruby? Dallas Police Department archives, accessed for the first time in late 2025, provided additional documentation of Ruby's associations, phone records from the days before the assassination, contact lists, patterns of communication. Nothing in those files directly establishes a conspiracy, but enough to raise the question of why any of it needed to remain classified for decades. This is where the story stands as of May 2026. The Warren Commission concluded there was no conspiracy. That conclusion has not been overturned by any declassified document. There is no direct evidence that the CIA orchestrated the assassination, but the declassified materials prove clearly that the CIA monitored Oswald, knew about his activities, had an officer directly connected to people who had documented contact with Oswald, and deliberately concealed all of that from the investigating bodies established to find the truth. What the CIA concealed was not evidence of a conspiracy. What the CIA concealed was evidence of how much they knew and chose not to say. That distinction is not a small one, and it is why, 60 years later, the white X on Elm Street keeps getting repainted every time the passing traffic wears it down. Because people keep coming. Because the question still does not have a complete answer. Not because the facts are unavailable, but because the people who held the facts decided, for decades, that some truths did not need to be spoken aloud. Now let's come back to 2026. Dealey Plaza is still there. The white X is still there, and Dallas is preparing for a summer unlike anything the city has experienced before. Millions of visitors arriving from every part of the world. International cameras pointed at every corner of the downtown, and the pressure to appear like a city worthy of hosting the largest sporting event on Earth. That is a pressure Dallas is handling in the way American cities typically handle major international events, by cleaning up what they would prefer not to be seen before the guests arrive. In March 2026, the United States Department of Justice and multiple federal agencies launched a coordinated operation, officially named Operation Red Card, targeting violent crime, drug trafficking, and human trafficking in the Dallas area for the duration of the World Cup. The name is drawn from football terminology. A red card is an instrument of removal. That was not an accident. During the same period, the city of Dallas committed $10 million to a nonprofit organization called Housing Forward, a program titled Street to Home, with the stated goal of moving homeless individuals off the streets of the downtown core. Before the tournament begins, on its face, this is a reasonable social policy. No one objects to the idea of helping people without housing find stable accommodation. But social workers and outreach organizations who have worked with Dallas's homeless population for years point to a detail that is difficult to ignore. The deadline for every one of these programs aligns precisely with the World Cup schedule, not with the actual needs of the people being helped. With the arrival date of the international cameras, there is a difference between solving a problem and concealing a problem before company arrives. And people who have been working inside these communities in Dallas, the caseworkers, The human rights advocates, the people who were here before FIFA signed any contract, say they have seen this before. After every major event, the people who were moved tend to reappear once the cameras leave. Dallas is also a city with an unusually visible portrait of inequality. The Uptown and Highland Park district's premium real estate, high-end restaurants, streets designed to photograph well. A short drive away, neighborhoods like South Dallas and West Dallas, where poverty rates and crime statistics rank among the highest in Texas. During the World Cup, the official FIFA fan zone will be constructed in the downtown area. Large screens, international food and beverage pricing, security perimeters, and crowd barriers. A contained environment designed to allow international visitors to experience Dallas without necessarily making contact with the actual city around it. And then there is one final detail about 2026 inches Dallas that rarely gets mentioned. AT&T Stadium is currently installing a natural grass surface to meet FIFA's standards, replacing the artificial turf the venue normally uses. A significant technical undertaking at considerable expense. FIFA required it. Dallas is delivering it. But once the World Cup is over, the Dallas Cowboys will return the stadium to artificial turf, because natural grass is not compatible with a dense NFL schedule played indoors under a closed roof. A city that lays real grass for the world to see, then removes it after the world goes home. This is not a criticism. It is a description of what a city does when it needs to look better than its ordinary self for a specific window of time. Dallas in 2026 is a city running on two parallel systems simultaneously: the version built for international visitors and the daily reality that its own residents live inside. And between those two versions, between FIFA's curated fan zone and the neighborhoods that no international broadcast feed will ever point a camera at, Dealey Plaza stands unchanged. The white X, still white. Nobody is installing new grass at Dealey Plaza for the World Cup, because nobody needs to improve it. It is already what it is, beautiful, in the way that only an unhealed wound can be. Let's come back to the 14th of July 2026, one final time. The World Cup semifinal. AT&T Stadium. 80,000 people inside. Billions watching across the world. Floodlights blazing. A referee's whistle, two teams playing the biggest match of their careers. And 45 minutes to the east, Dealey Plaza standing in the dark. No lights trained on it. No sound. Just a white X on a dark road surface. And a handful of people still out late, standing on the sidewalk, looking down the way people have always looked down at that spot for decades. That is Dallas in 2026. Two locations, two realities, existing in the same city on the same night, 45 minutes apart by car, and separated by a distance that cannot be measured in miles. We have passed through 4 layers of this city. The first layer, AT&T Stadium Jerry World, the largest and most expensive venue in the 2026 World Cup. Built by a billionaire, named after a telecommunications corporation, renamed by FIFA, currently laying real grass that will be removed the moment the tournament ends. A landmark engineered so that no one could overlook it, and after the World Cup, just another NFL stadium in Texas. The second layer, Dealey Plaza, where 8 seconds on the 22nd of November, 1963, changed the course of American and world history. An ordinary public square. Traffic moving through it every day. A white X on the road, the only marker that something irreversible happened here. The third layer. 60 years of CIA files evidence that the most powerful intelligence agency in the United States knew more about Oswald than it ever acknowledged, had an officer connected directly to people with documented contact with Oswald, and deliberately withheld that information from the very investigation it was assigned to support. Not a conspiracy, just a fact that took 60 years to say aloud. The fourth layer. Dallas 2026. A city running two parallel systems at once. Operation Red Card. A homelessness program with a deadline that matches the international broadcast schedule. Real grass installed. Real grass to be removed. FIFA's curated bubble on the city streets. And the neighborhoods that no international camera feed will ever point toward. 4 layers. One city. The 14th of July 2026. I am not telling you Dallas is a worse city than any other. Nobody could say that honestly. Dallas is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, a major center of finance, energy, and technology in the American Sunbelt. Its people, like the people of any city, are mostly trying to live well within the circumstances they have. But Dallas carries a weight that no other city on the 2026 World Cup host list is carrying. It is the city where an American president was killed. Not in wartime, not in a coup. In broad daylight, on a public street, in front of hundreds of people present, and millions watching on live television. And the only man charged with doing it was killed before he could say a single word in court. By a man that no one has ever fully explained how he got into that building or why he chose to do what he did. For more than 60 years, Dallas has worked to redefine itself. Museums, arts districts, high-rise development, successful sports franchises, a new economic identity, all of it real, all of it earned. But Dealey Plaza is still there. The White X is still there. And the 2026 World Cup, however spectacular, will not change that. Not because Dallas doesn't deserve a different story, but because history doesn't work that way. History is not overwritten by newer events. It only gets deeper, more layered, and more honest if you are willing to look at it directly. That is what I want you to remember when you watch the July 14th semifinal in Dallas. Whether you're inside the stadium, watching at home, or sitting in a bar somewhere in a different time zone on the other side of the world, you are watching a match being played in a city whose history has never been fully resolved, never fully explained, never fully told. And perhaps that is what makes football and every large human gathering both beautiful and painful in exactly the same way. We come together, and for a few hours, we collectively set aside the weight that every place we stand is still carrying. But that weight does not disappear when the final whistle blows. It is still there, on the road surface, in the White X. The 2026 World Cup spans 16 stadiums across 3 countries. We have told you about Azteca, about New York, about Dallas, Los Angeles, the city of Hollywood, spotlights, and manufactured dreams, is hiding 75,000 homeless people just off the edge of the red carpet. Miami, all sunshine and ocean, was built in part on money from people you would never want to meet after dark. And there are more cities still. If you want to know what lies beneath them, subscribe to this channel, because the World Cup lasts one summer. But the stories beneath these cities were there long before FIFA arrived, and they will still be there long after FIFA has gone.